One argument Democrats make is that the Republican Party started pandering to racists after the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Because of this, racist white people in the South started voting Republican. This is known as the Southern strategy. It's a nice story, but it's not backed by data. For example, after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the South continued to vote for Democrat governors, senators, and gubernatorial candidates for decades. So, the racists were still voting Democrat, not Republican. When the South finally did start voting Republican, it appears they did so for economic and religious reasons, not racist ones. This view is supported by the works of Professor Byron E. Schaefer, Professor Richard Johnston, Senior Elections Analyst Sean P. Trend, Professor Bruce Bartlett, Professor Matthew Lasseter, political scientist Nelson W. Polsby, and more. Byron Schaefer and Richard Johnston used election and polling data to show that the increasing republicanism of the South has been primarily a response to the vast economic change in the region since 1948. They documented their findings in their book, The End of Southern Exceptionalism. So, it was economics that turned the South Republican, not racism. This is further confirmed by Sean P. Trend. Sean P. Trend is a senior elections analyst for Real Clear Politics. In addition, the South became more Republican as it became less racist. According to a Gallup poll, from the 1950s to the 1990s, the portion of white Southerners who said they would be willing to vote for a black president increased from 8% to 95%. During the same period, the South started voting Republican. Democrats claim that Barry Goldwater was the Republican who first implemented the Southern strategy. They claim he opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in an attempt to win support from racist white Southerners. This couldn't be further from the truth. According to Mark K. Updegrove, a presidential historian, on July 24, 1964, just over 3 months before Election Day, Goldwater visited the White House to privately talk to his opponent, President Lyndon B. Johnson. When he left, it was with a mutual promise not to exploit race for campaign purposes. Goldwater condemned the KKK in 1964, during his presidential campaign, during his apparent Southern strategy. In his earlier years, Goldwater was an early member of the National Urban League Phoenix chapter. Goldwater even covered the group's early operating deficits with his own funds. In addition, Barry Goldwater was a member of the NAACP and an active supporter of desegregation in Phoenix. Goldwater voted for the Civil Rights Act of 1957 and the 24th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, but reluctantly opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, believing two of its provisions to be unconstitutional and a potential overreach of the federal government, a decision that considerably anguished him. According to Updegrove, Goldwater went on to lose the 1964 election to Johnson by one of the biggest landslides in presidential history, but he did so with his dignity intact, knowing he hadn't fanned the flames of bigotry. Democrats also claim Richard Nixon implemented the Southern strategy. They say that Nixon implemented racist tactics to win Southern votes. But Nixon had a civil rights record that completely contradicts this left-wing narrative. Nixon desegregated a majority of the schools, strengthened voting rights, and supported affirmative action. This is confirmed by the work of Dean J. Kitlowski. Democrats might object to this by saying that it wasn't his actions, but his words. They claim that Nixon used coded racism to win over racist Southerners. This is also highly unlikely. Several speeches by Nixon contradict this left-wing narrative. For example, Nixon was quoted saying, "I also call upon every American to note that the United Nations General Assembly has designated the year 1971 as the International Year for Action to Combat Racism and Racial Discrimination. I hope that all Americans will join in observing this year, through deeds and words which promote a spirit of brotherhood and mutual respect among all people." He said this on December 7, 1970. He also said, discrimination of any kind based on factors not relevant to job performance must be eradicated from federal employment. He said that on August 8, 1969. He also said, the Republican opportunity in the South is a golden one, but Republicans must not go prospecting for the fool's gold of racist votes. Southern Republicans must not climb aboard the sinking ship of racial injustice. They should let Southern Democrats sink with it as they have sailed with it. He wrote this in a Washington Post op-ed in 1966. All of these speeches and writings were made public for the whole country to hear or see, including the racist. He expressed these words during the same period that Democrats claim he was supposedly pandering to racist voters. Democrats have failed to provide a single example of Nixon publicly saying something racist in any of his campaign speeches. This is a major contradiction for the Southern strategy claim. The truth is that the Democrats were the party of slavery, black code, segregation, and Jim Crow. But rather than owning up to their sins, they shift blame to the party that freed the slaves. And people actually believe this nonsense. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, that concludes this video. Check out my article The Southern Strategy Myth for similar information. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.